Yep.
So this is why I think more than anything else, I'm willing to die on this hill of just don't take notes, because your notes don't mean anything. Don't
Yeah.
highlight, don't underline, because none of that shit means anything without the context surrounding it. Anyway,
Okay.
do you want to push back now?
Yeah.
I
Well,
feel it coming.
actually,
Ben's about to drop the hammer on me.
no, I've seen this Hills to Die on the agenda for a while, and my reaction is like, wait a sec. You're gonna die on this hill? Like you don't take notes? And I wonder if it's what we're thinking of when we talk about notes, because when you're talking about this class stuff, I'm 100% on board. But when I'm thinking about someone sitting at their computer, studying, and they're debating between two answer choices, when they start to write like an ask button request or something like that, I imagine that a lot of times that's helping them articulate and sometimes resolve the question on their own. And so I see that as a form of notes. And I'm like, now people do that overboard. So if I had to decide between no notes or notes, I'd say don't do notes, because some people waste too much time writing things. But what I would like is for people to write these pithy, like, okay, C is correct or better than D because, and they actually put it out there, and they force themselves to get concrete, as opposed to sloppy, which is
Yeah.
like, oh, it's a better fit.
Well,
And so if they're doing it right, I could see some value in there. And so then I'm like, well, I don't want to just like blanketly get rid of all notes, but maybe that's not what you're talking about, or maybe it is. I don't know.
ask a specific question. By all means, please ask a specific question. Hit the ask button in the LSAT daemon and write down as much as you can about why you're confused. What is it about that wrong answer that you think might be okay? What is it about that right answer that you don't really understand why it's correct? What is it about this question type that you don't understand? Is there, you don't understand the argument, whatever it is, right? Ask questions. Show up to class, turn on your camera, be brave, ask me a question. If you can't turn on your camera, that's fine. Ask me a question in the chat. Tell me what you don't understand, by all means. But see, that's why like note taking is like people writing down what they think they do understand,
Mm-hmm.
and they're almost always wrong. That's what I really don't like about note taking, right? Is that people have these half-assed things, like they think, oh, I've solved it now, I'm going to write
Mm-hmm.
down instructions for myself on what I'm supposed to do, and they
Mm-hmm.
don't ever seem like they're hitting it on the head. I mean, what you really
Mm-hmm.
need to do is just do another LSAT question and try to get it right. And when you
Mm-hmm.
don't get it right, okay, then there's something there that you don't understand and you need to try to clarify that. But I just don't know that people are really capable of getting takeaways that have any meaning. Now, if
Mm-hmm.
you're scoring 170 and you're trying to get to 175,
Mm-hmm.
then maybe I'll give you a little bit more credit for being able to write down key takeaways. But if you're scoring 140, trying to get to 145, there's vastly more that you don't understand than you do understand.
Mm-hmm.
So you writing down some weird notes, and I just don't like. How about that student who has a page worth of notes on necessary assumptions?
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, okay. How about a flashcard? Like, if you want to write down verbatim a necessary assumption question stem,
Mm-hmm.
or we just call it the question these days. I'm trying to get rid of all of that, like, overly fussy LSAT language, including
Sure. Yeah.
stimulus. I
The
never want to say
stimulus.
stimulus ever
Ugh.
again. I never want to say STEM again if I can avoid it. It's just the passage and the question, or the argument and the question. Anyway, if you want to write down the question verbatim now, not just a fragment, but a verbatim question, and then on the other side of the flashcard, it says necessary assumption. Okay, maybe that would be useful to drill, and in another flashcard, you've got a sufficient assumption question stem, and it says sufficient assumption on the other side. that could be useful. Another useful flashcard would be, it says necessary assumption on one side, and on the other side it says, which one must the author agree with? Right? So
Hmm.
it's a clear, here's the analysis that I'm going to do when I encounter a necessary assumption question. Okay, fine. Flashcards, fine. But boy, lengthy notes on every class. What are you going to do with that?
Yeah.
I'd much rather have you just participate than try to be a stenographer.
Yeah.
Plus we got the live transcription now anyway. So definitely don't need to be a stenographer because it's just appearing there right in the Zoom.
Yeah. So maybe the takeaway here is don't take notes, but if you are unclear about anything, you have a question, then that's okay to articulate that question, um, and write it down. I mean, that's a form of note taking, but it's really to ask a question, and it may be something you send in the ask button request, or it may be something you write down for yourself to then ask in class or something like that.
Yeah, ask your teacher, ask your study partner. I'm not saying don't ever write anything down, but
Mm-hmm.
I think you got to be double. What I'm saying, I guess, is that you got to be double checking that stuff. So I would much prefer that you ask a question than you just write down notes. Like there are endless students scoring 150, taking page
Mm-hmm.
after page after page of notes. That's getting them absolutely nowhere because they're all muddy. They're all confused, and their
Mm-hmm.
notes clearly indicate that they're totally confused.
Yeah.
And so instead of all that, they should be like, okay, teacher, or okay, study partner. So on a paradox question, what I do is I figure out what the mystery is, and then I find an answer that solves that mystery.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? And if someone said that to me, then I would go, yeah, okay, I think you get it. That sounds like a pretty good method to have on a paradox question. Great, good. I don't know. I just don't think that that's necessarily note taking. That's more like participating in a conversation with your teacher or with your study
Yeah.
partner.
Or if you're, well, what I'm thinking is you're studying on your own and you need to write down these questions. But the notes that you're taking there in air quotes are really questions that you've articulated in such a way that you're not being lazy and just saying, "Hey, can you help me with this?" Which
Yeah.
is great. I'm glad that you're asking for help, but it's much better if you say, "All right, this is where I'm struggling, and
Oh
this
yeah.
is why I'm struggling."
Oh yeah. A a a plea for help is much better than a page of notes. I would just much rather have you, if you're in my class, I would much rather have you drop a line in the chat. Hey, I'm confused about XYZ. I think that moves the needle so much further than you furiously scribbling down everything that I've said in the last 10 minutes.